Hello, AI Seeking the Truth. We got another off the rail video for you guys, and if y'all have not subscribed to this encounter, I would like y'all to reach down there and subscribe. It doesn't cost a thing. Ring the bell, select all. It's all free, and you're going to get some off the rail content, trust me. Some of this stuff is pretty bad. I actually just told somebody to go listen to the one called Neighbor from Hell, I believe is the name of it, and you'll see what I'm talking about off the rails. Alright guys, I got this encounter sent in to me, so we're going to go ahead and drop it on Saturday, and I hope y'all are having a great Saturday. I've never been a stranger to the paranormal, but what happened that night was terrifying. I hope to never experience anything like it again. For some context, I live in northern Alabama, an area known for its haunted places. One of these spots is called Devil's Bridge. I don't know much about the history of the place, but I've heard it's an old crumbling bridge that's said to be haunted. It all started at my friend Kay's house. Along with Kay, there was L, J, and WK. Mentioned that he knew the place we should check out. He said it would be fun, and we could just hang out for a bit. Being the adventurous type, I agreed, even though I'd never heard of this place before. I thought it would be cool to explore. As we arrived at the location, I started to feel like we weren't alone. The sensation was eerie, and it made me hesitate about getting out of the car. We parked and spent a few minutes talking about the buddy system, who would stick with whom. Elle and I decided to stay together. However, shortly after we started walking, Elle said she was getting a bad feeling and couldn't breathe, so she decided to go back to the car. I watched her walk back, feeling a sense of unease. At that point, I realized K and W and J were way ahead of me, so I decided to catch up. The road was dark, and I soon lost sight of them. I figured they must have turned off or gotten far enough ahead of me that I couldn't see them. But as I kept walking, the strange feeling intensified, and it felt like I was being watched. My heart started to race, and I then picked up the pace. Eventually, I caught up to them. They were laughing off to the side of the road, and they asked if I was okay. I told them I was fine, just a little creeped out. We continued walking until we reached the bridge. To be honest, it wasn't much to look at. It was just an old falling apart structure. We stood around talking when once again I got the feeling of being watched. That's when I decided to head back to the car. I told the others, and they said they would start walking back shortly after me. I agreed and started heading in the direction of the car. I was about 50 feet from them when I heard running behind me. I spun around, but all I saw were K, W, and J still standing there. Confused, I turned back around and kept walking. But then I heard the running again, this time accompanied by the sound of dogs barking from somewhere to the side of me. I turned, expecting to see something, but there was nothing. No house, no dogs, just darkness. I looked back again, just still saw nothing. My anxiety spiked. I began to run back to the car. When I finally got in, I told Elle to lock the doors. I didn't want to take any chances. I told her not to unlock them until Kay and the others were back. A few minutes later, we heard banging on the doors. I turned around, and there they were. K, W, and J looking terrified. Elle unlocked the doors, and they jumped inside of them, yelling to drive. Elle and I were confused, but we did as they asked, starting the car and driving away. Once they calmed down, Kay explained that what had happened. As they were walking back, they heard something behind them. But they tried to laugh it off. But then Kay turned around and saw a tall figure walking toward them. Before he could even say anything, he saw W and J running the other way. Kay followed them, hearing the same eerie dog barking that I had heard. We were all shaken, and honestly, so was I. I've heard of creatures like wendigos and flesh crawlers, but I've never thought that they would be near me, especially since the nearest Native American tribe was over an hour away. But the way those dogs were barking made me wonder if something was mimicking the sound of the dogs, were trying to warn us about whatever was out there. As we drove away from Devil's Bridge, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something sinister. The darkness seemed to press in around us, and I couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if we had stayed longer. The days that followed were filled with a sense of unease. I couldn't concentrate at work, and I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder. I knew that I had experienced something truly terrifying, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was not far from over. As the weeks turned into months, the memory of the night began to fade, but the feeling of being watched never truly went away. I would catch glimpses of movements out of the corner of my eye, only to turn to find no one there. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew that something was off. I began to research the history of Devil's Bridge, hoping to find some explanation for what had happened. What I found was chilling. Devil's Bridge had a long history of paranormal activity with numerous reports of ghost sightings and unexplained occurrences. But it was one particular legend that caught my attention. According to the local lore, Devil's Bridge was home to a malevolent spirit that roamed in the woods, searching for its next victim. The spirit was said to be able to mimic the sounds of animals, including dogs. I couldn't shake the feeling that we had encountered the spirit that night. The way the dogs seemed to appear out of nowhere, the feeling of being watched, it all seemed to point in the same direction. I couldn't shake that feeling that we had encountered the spirit that night, that the dogs we seemed to hear out of nowhere, feeling being watched, all seemed to point in the same conclusion. As I finished my research, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. I knew that I had experienced something terrifying that night, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was not far from over, because whatever we had experienced that night had followed me back to my house. I was seeing glimpses of it out of the corner of my eyes, and ended up having to rebuke it several times before actually getting my house cleared. So as a warning to others, just know that whenever you go out and look for these things, they can attach to you and they can follow you home. And they can be a pain in the ass to get rid of. Because once they find a home in your home, and they're out of the dry places where they don't like to be, it's really hard to get rid of them. Wow. That's a pretty strong story, pretty strong ending. Makes a lot of sense. I've heard that happen to a lot of people, that things follow them home. Or the great Scott Carpenter had that happen. It followed him home. So yeah, I truly believe that happens. I'm glad y'all made it back, and I'm glad you was able to get rid of it. Guys, thank you for tuning in to AI Speaking the Truth. If you have not subscribed, I'd like to again invite you to subscribe. We got some more off the rail encounters coming, guys, lined up. So until the next one, guys, be safe and be careful what you mess with.